Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're putting on our historical detective hats and taking a strictly objective, evidence-based approach to antiquity. We're going to focus on one of the most debated figures in human history, but we're doing it with a bit of a twist. We're going to look exclusively at what the surviving, non-biblical historical records actually have to tell us. So, let's try a little thought experiment. Let's wipe the New Testament completely from history and see exactly what we can prove using only outside sources. Just imagine a world where the Gospels were completely lost to time. Would we still know that a man named Jesus of Nazareth lived in the first century? Would we know how he died or what his followers actually believed about him? It's a genuinely fascinating question, and it forces us to look exclusively at Roman, Jewish, and early secular records to build out a historical profile. Here's our game plan for today's investigation. We'll start with the extra-biblical puzzle, move into the Roman records, then look at Josephus, the Jewish historian, followed by critics, satirists, and outsiders, then early Christian voices, and finally, reconstructing the figure. Let's get right into it. Starting off with Section 1, the extra-biblical puzzle. Okay, ground rules first. To build our baseline for what counts as real historical evidence in this explainer, we're maintaining a rigorous impartiality. We are strictly limiting our sources to texts written within a century or two of the events. Obviously, that means we're completely excluding the New Testament, but it also means we have to exclude much later texts like the Talmud or the Toledot Yeshu from the 5th to 11th centuries. Why? Well, historians generally agree those are just way too late to be of prime value for determining first-century facts. We want the earliest, most direct references we can possibly find. Moving right along to Section 2, the Roman records. Let's start filling our empty canvas with the Romans. We're talking about high-ranking historians and officials, guys who had absolutely no interest in promoting a new religion. In fact, they mostly despised it. This timeline really grounds us in the historical reality of the Roman Empire. You see, in 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome leads Emperor Nero to blame a brand new group called Christians. By 112 AD, you have a Roman governor named Pliny the Younger writing to Emperor Trajan basically asking, hey, what do I do with these people who meet before dawn to sing hymns to Christ as a god? A few years later, Roman heavyweights like Tacitus and Suetonius published their major works, cementing the origins of this movement right into the official Roman record. Now look at this. This is absolutely crucial. Tacitus is widely considered Rome's preeminent historian, famously meticulous about checking his official sources. He had zero sympathy for Christians. He literally called their beliefs a mischievous superstition, yet his writing impartially confirms the exact manner and timing of the execution. He establishes three massive historical facts. Jesus existed, he was executed by crucifixion, what he calls the extreme penalty, and this was ordered by Pontius Pilate during the reign of Emperor Tiberius. Now, you eagle-eyed history buffs might spot a tiny discrepancy here, and it brilliantly illustrates how historians actually work. The actual stone inscription from Pilate's own lifetime calls him a prefect, but Tacitus calls him a procurator. Does that mean Tacitus is unreliable? No way. Scholars point out that Tacitus likely just retrojected the civilian title of procurator, which was the common term in his own day, back onto Pilate. It's just a natural updating of terminology, and it actually highlights Tacitus's independent, distinctly Roman perspective. We also run into this fascinating phonetic confusion. We see it in Suetonius, who wrote that Emperor Claudius expelled Jews from Rome because of disturbances instigated by Christus. You see, to a Roman ear, Christus, meaning anointed one, sounded completely identical to Chrestus, which was just a common Greek name meaning useful. This simple misspelling in official Roman documents inadvertently proves that within just a few decades, Jesus, or Christus, was a known, controversial figure making such huge waves that the Roman emperor himself had to step in and issue an expulsion order. Next up, Section 3, Josephus, the Jewish historian. Let's turn our attention to Flavius Josephus. He was a first-century Jewish historian who lived right near Nazareth, and actually kept in close contact with the Sanhedrin. Writing around 93 AD, his massive 20-volume work is an absolute goldmine for understanding first-century Judea. And he mentions Jesus twice. The first is a very passing, widely accepted reference to the execution of James, the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. But the second, that's the highly famous and heavily debated Testimonium Flavianum. It's a longer paragraph detailing Jesus' life, miracles, and crucifixion. For centuries, scholars argued over whether a Christian scribe altered this text, because, let's be real, A traditional Jew like Josephus wouldn't have outright called Jesus the Messiah. But here's how historians crack the code. By comparing surviving manuscripts, they strip away later additions to uncover Josephus's authentic, impartial observation underneath. In 1971, Arabic and Syriac versions of this text were discovered, and guess what? They lacked that heavy-handed Christian phrasing. Instead of outright declaring he was the Christ, the text simply states he was believed to be or thought to be the Christ. Once you strip away those few altered words, you're left with a very authentic-sounding Josephus confirming that Jesus was a wise teacher, a doer of incredible deeds, who drew a massive following, and was crucified by Pilate at the accusation of leading men.
Which brings us to Section 4, Critics, Satirists, and Outsiders.
This is where we get rapid-fire clues from hostile witnesses. Even while they're actively mocking or criticizing him, consider the incredibly diverse facts they inadvertently verify. We've got Mara bar Serapion, a Syrian prisoner around 73 AD, lamenting the death of the Jews' wise king. You've got Thallus, a historian around 55 AD, trying to explain away the darkness during the crucifixion as just a solar eclipse. Lucian, a 2nd-century Greek satirist, actually mocks Christians for worshipping a crucified sage. And Celsus, a fierce philosopher who absolutely hated Christianity, tries to smear Jesus by claiming he was born to a poor spinning woman and learned magic in Egypt. Even while attacking him, these hostile witnesses independently confirm his existence, his teachings, his reputation for miracles, and his execution.
Now for Section 5, Early Christian Voices.
While we're keeping our strictly objective lens here, we absolutely must look at early, non-biblical Christian texts. These are vital historical data points. They aren't in the Bible, but they're crucial artifacts from the first 100 years. These early writers, some of whom learned directly from the apostles, show that a highly structured belief system was flourishing within just decades. Clement of Rome, writing before the end of the 1st century, speaks clearly of Jesus' death and resurrection. Ignatius of Antioch insists Jesus was truly crucified under Pilate and Herod. And the Didache, an early discipleship manual, outlines specific community rituals honoring Jesus. Historically speaking, this shows us that the core narrative wasn't some legend that evolved centuries later. It was locked in and widely documented almost immediately.
And finally, Section 6, Reconstructing the Figure.
Okay, let's pull the whole shebang together to finalize our thought experiment. Remember our starting premise. Without a single page of the Bible, this incredibly detailed historical profile emerges entirely from outside fragments. If we just stack up the non-biblical sources we reviewed today, we know an influential teacher lived in Judea, performed what people thought were miracles, had a brother named James, and was executed on a cross by Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. We also know that immediately afterward, his followers claimed he rose from the dead and began worshiping him as a deity, sparking a movement that reached the highest levels of the Roman government within a single generation. It's a genuinely provocative thought, isn't it? It really challenges our perception of the ancient world, leaving us to wonder what else the surviving records have left to teach us. We started by wiping the New Testament from the historical record, and yet, through the incredibly rare surviving texts of Romans, Jews, and Greeks, the outline of this 1st century figure remains remarkably intact. Thanks so much for joining me on this historical investigation. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.